Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Devtoberfest. Week 4, day 5. It's the cap day, but it's also the Fun Friday. So thank you all for joining us. Hello in the chat. Tom's in the chat and Nico's in the chat. Gabrielle, hi. Put all your comments, all your questions in the chat. I'll try and convey them. Why is Vitali on his side? That's excellent. We're starting out completely randomly. This is going to be a very random session, but hopefully sort of enjoyable as well. So it's a fun Friday session, and we've got as many of the developer advocates here as we can fit in this small grid. And we're going to be talking about developer tools. Developer tools, and I used in the 21st century, so we can, exclude things like SE38, but maybe we'll talk about that. Anyway, so welcome everybody. And Matthias, Matthias Matthias, do you live on the YouTube channel? It's amazing. You're everywhere, and also all the events as well. So yeah, welcome everybody. So why don't we start off? I'm not going to introduce everybody. Maybe I should. Maybe do we know everybody here? So we've got Tom, we've got Nora, we've got Rich, we've got Nico, we've got Kevin, we've got Josh, we've got a right-angled Vitali, we've got Riley, we've got Ajay, and we've got Rekha, who's not on video yet, but will be soon. Hopefully, Rekha, if you get your video camera sorted out. And yeah, we're going to talk about developer tools, partly because that's what we like to talk about, but also partly because I think there's a new wave of exciting technology coming our way. I think some people are already using it. This morning, for example, we had the inimitable Dr. David Kuntz kicking off today, Devtoberfest Day today, with CAP agentic programming, agentic coding with CAP, specifically talking about something called an MCP server, something agentic, open code he showed as well. So hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that. But first of all, who wants to kick us off? We were talking just before about Eclipse and how to some of us, Eclipse looks really modern, but to others, it looks a little bit dated. So why don't we start out? In fact, Nora, I'm going to pick on you because you're the person who mentioned Eclipse.
I did, yeah.
When did you use Eclipse, and do you still use it now?
Well, I mean, when I actually used Eclipse was honestly at university. So during my master's degree, the last time when I was teaching Java and my students were learning Java, I had to use Eclipse with them. It was fine back then. I don't remember it being like old or outdated or anything. But then today, actually last week, I started using it again. Not true. I used it for HANA too. But then now again for Java, for this hands-on session for TechEd. And the hands-on session is awesome, but Eclipse is kind of, I mean, it looks the same as 10 years ago. That's all I'm going to say to that.
So do I. I look the same as 10 years ago. There's nothing wrong
True. With you, that's a good thing, though.
But I mean, is it fair to say that Eclipse and tools like it, maybe VS Code as well, let's discuss this, it's almost like a meta tool. It's a meta environment because of course we have ADT, which is the main reason for ABAP developers to use Eclipse.
I mean, I don't want to kind of just hate on Eclipse so much, but I just think if you don't really evolve, like for example, best example, I had to download a Git repository, right? I wanted to clone it. Now, Eclipse doesn't use passkeys, or at least I didn't know how to have it use passkeys for me. So I honestly never know passwords for anything. It's one of my biggest issues that I don't know passwords. So I honestly just couldn't clone my Git repo because I'm not going to change my password right before TechEd. I'm not going to do that. So yeah, that was the first trouble I had. No passkeys. Yeah, that's honestly the biggest trouble I had. And then obviously like coding assistants and stuff. I mean, I don't know. Does that exist in Eclipse? I don't know. Does it?
It does.
Oh,
I mean, like you can get GitHub Copilot in Eclipse,
okay,
but
cool.
even how it integrates into Eclipse, sort of the bottom window and the way that it flows isn't quite as nice as the flow in VS Code. You can tell wasn't like designed with that in mind. Like in VS Code, we have the dedicated chat window now
Yeah.
for assistants, and they built in a flow for it, and it's not there in Eclipse.
I have a question for you. In Eclipse, console and terminal, what's the difference?
Oh, who wants to go for that one?
Console's output.
Right.
But yeah, okay,
Output
that's the
only.
difference. But the thing is, if I try to use the terminal, it doesn't do what I want to do. Like I can't use all the shortcuts in the terminal, even though I can run it and then have it in the console as an output.
But just look at Nico's face. His brain is just like use NeoVim, use NeoVim, use NeoVim, use NeoVim.
I mean, I wouldn't. I don't. I'm just. Yeah.
I'm waiting for my moment to chime in.
So in fact, Gabriel,
but
just
before
going
we
back-
switch to NeoVim, can I at least say one word in defense of Eclipse?
Okay.
No.
Because I assume
because
no
that's,
one else.
that's one word. Because that'll do.
Okay, and the word is HANA, but not HANA Studio, but because HANA has a plugin into dbeaver, and dbeaver is based on Eclipse, it is actually a tool of choice for quite many of us who are doing as well SQL, regular SQL, not like, HANA native development, but just regular SQL. So it's okay. And I like it, and many people like it, and no one is questioning because it just delivers functionality that we need. All
So-
from my side.
Thank you for that, Vitaly. So in fact, I just want to point out that Gabriel in the chat has sort of answered or contributed to Nora's question about passwords. Gabriel says you can use KeePass with Eclipse. So there we go. And to Marian's point, yes, this is basically, this is what we do behind the scenes. We just talk nonsense. Well, no, it's not nonsense. So I'm going to poll us all. I want a one-word answer first of all from each of you. What is your daily driver for development? The IDE, the editor, whatever. Obviously, Nico's given a bit of a clue for what he's going to say, but I'm going to shout out your names first of all. I'm going to randomly say Ajay, and you're on mute, Ajay. Never pick a person on mute. All right, while Ajay's figuring out his mute thing, Tom.
Don, did you say me?
Yes.
Oh, VS Code.
VS Code. Okay, another meta tool almost because you got all the extensions and everything. Nora.
I honestly
Not Eclipse.
not Eclipse. VS Code right now, and actually, I just had to return my laptop to IT because nothing was working there, and the IT guy got extremely angry at me for not setting up my SharePoint properly. I told him I never use SharePoint, like for nothing, and then he's like, "What do you do all day?" And I'm like, "Well, like coding."
Real
mostly."
work.
And then he's like, "You can code," and I was like, "Yeah, thank you."
Well
I
done.
Oh
I
gosh.
also cringed a little when you said you haven't set up SharePoint because there is plenty of team stuff that we do on SharePoint.
Yeah, I know. I go to Teams and I do my stuff in Teams, but I don't have it
okay.
like configured. I don't know. It's just.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I will configure it now.
Just to those in the chat, we do talk about SharePoint all the time.
Yes, we do.
Well, DJ.
We all love it.
Don't. DJ does.
So what was it? You said VS Code, Nora, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a safe choice. What about you, Kevin?
I'm using VS Code. I miss Xcode though, but I'm using VS Code.
So Xcode is basically Apple's proprietary IDE, right?
It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
It's
Can you
very
run-
heavyweight.
Okay, cool. Well, what do you miss about Xcode that's not in VS Code or anything else?
So
Swift.
Swift, first of all. No, I'm not a huge fan of that. Here is your little shell, and now you can configure God and the earth into it. And I rather have something which is just there and has a purpose and just does what I want it to do, rather than going on the marketplace, downloading random stuff, hoping it's
A
gonna
few
work.
months ago, we talked about NeoVim and how you wanted to try it. That's
Yeah,
like the
that's-
complete opposite of that.
That's why I stopped using it very quickly.
Kevin, we know you love Xcode. We know you're weird, but we love you for it.
Somebody has to be weird.
So talking of NeoVim, Nico.
Yeah, I'll be even more universal and just say terminal.
Ooh.
Someone said terminal.
That is that a mic drop or is that a mic drop?
Kitty, to be specific, I really enjoy the way you can set things up in the KittyConf file and have your terminal.
Yeah. Although I am trying to steer you away from using the Kitty proprietary window management, pane management, in favor of
I did try Tmux again yesterday and broke my fingers doing so. Like, just just can't do it. Like it's just Control B. No.
I'll sell you my Tmux Con for about €10 if you want. Okay, so terminal. I like that answer. You win so far, Nico. Rich, come on, go off mute and tell us what you use.
ABAP development tools in Eclipse, baby.
Oh, what a perfect answer.
And a little bit of VS Code these days, but
have they introduced a tool yet to clean up all that Hungarian notation?
all right, I'm going to go back on mute now.
Okay, I came back from mute actually. So for many years, I have worked with Eclipse in Java J2E development, and also when we were doing ADT development. So for many years in SAP, I used Eclipse and ADT, but honestly, from last maybe a year or so, I have not opened Eclipse and ADT. So it's
nothing
VS
changed.
Code.
Ajay, nothing changed.
No, it's VS Code now. So that I work with. Yeah.
VS Code seems to be very popular. What about you, Josh?
I mean, you love Emacs, right? I
Well,
want to make sure I bring you back into the conversation, DJ.
Talking of that, Transistor, who was also in this morning's session with David Kuntz, has said a beautiful, made a beautiful suggestion, of course, which is VI, which we'll maybe talk about later. But yeah, VI.
Yes, no, I love
Joule
do
Studio.
a lot with Java and BlackBerry and their JDK, and that development kit had Eclipse plugins and everything else. But I liked getting into Sublime Text Editor, and I used that a lot before VS Code took over. And just like everybody else now, I'm going to the path of least resistance. Just give me one basic place, a landing page, and then I'll plug into all the other stuff I need.
Nice. I like it.
VS Code allows that. It's got the landing page for, I think, developers' storefront.
It's basically, yeah, like I mentioned before, it's like I think of it as a meta tool, because it's a tool that you can install other tools in, which we'll maybe come on to shortly when we start talking about what we saw in David's session this morning, for example. But anyway, Vitaly, come on, give us your sweet answer.
And surprise, surprise, it will be something completely different comparing to what everyone else said. SAP Business Application Studio. And there is a reason for that. And the reason is that all other tools I can just use. And if I don't like something, okay, you can configure, you can look for answers and so on. But only with Business Application Studio, if I don't like something, I can reach out to our developers and I can get this fixed. So this feeling that, I actually do have some influence. I see that Nora disagrees, but
you don't. You only use it for code jams.
No, I am using SAP Business Application Studio a lot. And for example, when I didn't like something with Python in Visual Studio Code, I tried to reach out to developer advocate from Microsoft. I never got response.
Huh.
But with Buzz, I feel like I do play the role of developer advocate, where I can do this both ways, right? I'm not just using the tool, I can provide the feedback and I can get this fixed. And it's kind of like something that I like.
Actually, I kind of have to say I also use it every day now, because I'm building this agent for Tekkit, and that is using Business Application Studio. So I also use it every day.
That's why we are on the same team, Nora.
The beautiful thing about the Business Application Studio is, in my opinion, is that the dev spaces specifically, it's a level playing field. It gives everybody, the perfect environment, a Linux-based command line. And it's a VM, it's not a VM, it's a container, which is fantastic. So I love it for that reason. So yeah.
When I use Baz, I open it in VS Code though.
As dev space, right?
Using the Baz extension in VS Code.
Yeah, as a remote resource, it's fantastic. It's a free resource.
Because it renders faster instead of in a web browser.
And also you don't get the problems.
Feels a little snappier.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing that slows me down when I'm using it in the browser. I still use VI in Baz. I don't use the actual Baz IDE, but of course, escape is a big, an important key there. But when you press escape in a browser, it just messes things up. So,
Yeah,
So using
and
it
I'm not
from VS
then I'm
Code
not
is-
accidentally hitting the back button or something like that and losing
yeah.
losing the whole thing
Yeah.
when I'm running it natively within VS Code, and my keyboard shortcuts and my cut and paste and all that just works.
So here's a challenge to the chat. So, for example, to Douglas Cesar, hi Douglas, or Marion, or Matthias, or Transistor, go and find where the documentation is to how to do what Tom just said. See if you can find it and put it in the chat, or maybe you can't share links in the chat. It really annoys me. But anyway, have a look to see where that is. Right, Riley.
But sorry, just like, I'm really happy because it sounds like Buzz generated more discussion here than Eclipse. So
True.
my work is done.
Also,
Bye.
DJ.
Was that wiping your hands of Eclipse or wiping your hands of Baz?
DJ, we can
I'm
also
done with
use
the
AI
discussion.
to find things.
Say again. Where's
So
Say
you
it-
don't
say
have
it-
you don't have to ask the chat for finding stuff. AI can do that for you.
did you say that to trigger me?
No.
I like finding things myself because otherwise I'll lose the ability to master documentation and find my way around it. I'm not going to use AI to look up documentation for me. End of. But anyway, that's another topic. Yeah, no. I mean, funnily enough, though, using AI to look up documentation is a superpower, not for me as a human, but for me as a user of the CAP MCP server. Search docs, search_docs. I'll share or somebody can share a link maybe in the chat to the CAP MCP repo where it's got the search docs and the search model. It's pretty awesome. I think that's a really good use case for searching documentation, but not for you, but for the LLM. But anyway, Riley.
I switch back and forth between Baz and VS Code. Because of my work on the tutorial system, I found myself actually using Cockpit and Copilot to actually write a VS Code extension, which got me like very, very deep into VS Code. And that was an interesting experience in itself. But the thing for VS Code, and I think to a lesser extent Baz, I'm sort of a agnostic user of IDEs, so I just sort of go in and start using it and try to figure it out what's obvious and what's not. The biggest help that I gave myself in using either Baz or VS Code was actually sit down with the documentation for an afternoon and just really, really understand like what's it showing you on the status bar? What's the relationship between the activity bars and the sidebars and those kinds of things? And that just investing that an afternoon in each actually changed my whole outlook on both of them.
So can I clarify what you just said there? So it was just an afternoon on the sofa, just you and the documentation. Is that right, Riley? No AI involved?
Well, yes. I was on a computer, and I don't tend to use the computer on the sofa, but yes, that's exactly what it was. I was sitting down, not really doing any particular task. I wasn't trying to accomplish anything related to work. It was just sit down and learn the way they wanted me to learn, rather than just sort of fumbling through looking at UI elements and saying, yeah, that's interesting. No, that must not be important because I'm not using it, but really trying to learn it the way somebody intended.
In a sort of light flow with the documentation. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I like the agnosticism. And I think that also reminds me, I'd love to hear what you in the chat think about this, and obviously my lovely colleagues here in front of me. But I still remember a time, it wasn't that long ago, when VS Code wasn't even a twinkle in the eye of Microsoft, and the cool editor on the street was Atom from GitHub. And what's happened to Atom now? Are we going to see the same with VS Code? And this is where I think it comes back to tooling for the 21st century, and what I think Josh said, or somebody said, about it basically being something to plug other stuff into. So when VS Code is, no more the IDE du jour, bit of French, by the way, on a Friday afternoon.
Hey,
Then
I also just in the chat, let's make note. 5-syllable word so far, agnosticism. So is there anything more that DJ has said than 5 syllables? So while we're hearing DJ go on a rant about whatever he's saying, let's make sure we keep track of the largest syllabic word he uses.
Are you saying we need to have some sort of sesquipedalism watch?
Ooh, is that 6?
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so and this is where I think the extension concept of VS Code and other editors as well, of course, VI, Vim, all these different things. This gives us the ability to live beyond a given IDE, right? So when the next Wizzo IDE comes along, we still got our line, our OData viewer, our CDS extension for displaying, etc. Because a lot of these things are server based. Can I mention the language server protocol, which actually came about, was created for VS Code, right? And the language server protocol has brought us so many cool things for example, CDS and JavaScript and everything else. So I think, maybe it's not about specifically the IDE. That's just, that's just the framework, but the tools within it. So I can see Rekka in the call, but I'm not sure that she's managed to connect. So Rekka, if you can connect, come off mute and shout, or come off video and shout. Otherwise, we'll carry. Oh, what's going on? Oh, she's disappeared.
You just made her leave.
It's something I said, obviously. Right. Anyway, so who wants to talk about some of the extensions, some of the plugins, maybe MCP based, as we've sort of mentioned that already. Let us know in the chat as well what tools you use, what extensions you use. But Rekka!
Yeah, sorry.
You're here.
I think my screen was frozen for some time.
Is that because you were using the wrong IDE?
Oh, like none of the IDs what you're discussing right now I'm using as of now, but 3 years before I have used Eclipse when I transitioned from SE80 for ABAP to Eclipse. So that was a good experience. Like I didn't have any hiccups 3 years before, but right now I'm not up to date with what's happening with Eclipse.
Not being up to date is in my DNA generally. So I think not being up to date is pretty cool. Just being focused on what you do right. I've been using a 45-year-old editor for as long as I can remember. Anyway.
Must be nice being an editor half your age. So
I'm going to pick on Kevin because we love Kevin and his Xcode weirdness. But I'm going to pick on Kevin to talk a little bit about Tell us what MCP is, because that is something that I think we were talking about. LSPs, Language Server Protocol, which is an enabling protocol for IDEs to talk to language servers that are an expert in a certain language. CDS, or should I say CDL, of course, but that's a different discussion altogether. Or JavaScript, or even ABAP. I can only dream, but a language server for ABAP, that'd be amazing. Anyway, language servers, a way to connect to and use the facilities of something that knows a lot about language X. In that context, maybe explain a little bit about what MCP is.
So let me try to explain that way. Before MCP was there, we had an issue. We had LLMs trying to do work for us, trying to find information, accessing tools, trying to do actions or anything. And all of these resources had proprietary interfaces, and those LLMs got very confused a lot of the times. So a company called Anthropic thought about, why are we not kind of creating a protocol which standardizes the interaction from LLMs or from models to resources, tools, and other things it might be able to use. So it's not going to get confused anymore. And that's where MCP comes from, the Model Context Protocol.
That is a fantastic explanation. In fact, that reminds me, or what you said right at the start, reminds me of a classic quote from Jamie Zawinski, which is all about a developer has a problem. And they say, I know, I'm going to use a regular expression to solve it. Now they have two problems. So, be careful what you wish for.
So this is like, I remember when you first started learning about Kubernetes, back when we were talking about that, as developer advocates pre 2019, and the Open Container Initiative, the OCI, was something that I was actually at Red Hat at the time. And we were doing a lot with Kubernetes there in OpenShift, and we were reconfiguring how all the different things in their middle layer was being configured, and Kubernetes and Docker and all of this same exact thing that Kevin said. How do we talk to each other? How do we have standards? There was no Open Container Initiative before Docker and Kubernetes went to market with their containerization and their way for orchestrating them. And then the OCI was the same thing as the MCP servers. We all got to get on the same page or there's no interconnectivity. So it's funny how we get a great thing out there, it gets adoption, then they're like, oh, we should probably plan how people are going to use this.
Yep. So yeah, we just got lucky, but lucky for the industry, MCP got adopted as more or less the industry standard now, which is great because
I think that
fairly easy.
It had to happen as an enabler to move us forward, because there was so much chaos is the wrong word, but there was so much in the mixing pot going round, and lots of different organizations, open source, private, doing stuff. And it was only the birth of MCP that's allowed, I think, a little bit of stabilization and sort of normalization, which has then been the cause of a blossoming of all sorts of different ideas. Hey, now we've got this sort of constraint, and constraints are good. What can we do with this constraint?
And the most beautiful thing about all of this is that it is IDE agnostic. Like the MCP protocol is just an enabler for some server to be somewhere, and any IDE, any large language model, any client to connect to it and query it. So I think that's sort of the most beautiful part about it, just like language servers, like with the language server protocol. So I can use the same CDS, MCP, and NeoVim as everybody else does in VS Code with any client that I like to use, which is pretty cool.
Isn't it fair to say, Tom, that clients of MCP servers and clients of large language models predominantly are sort of command line based, right? So in essence, they're available everywhere anyway.
Yeah, I mean, because you can have both an HTTP or standard in, standard out interface for communication. So yeah.
I mean, what David Kunz showed this morning, for example, Open Code, that was a TUI, a terminal user interface based experience that he was enjoying, and we were all enjoying that. So yeah, I mean, I think we the industry have finally learned that independence and abstraction, surprise, surprise, is super important for tools as well as for layers of software.
DJ, and knowing your love for languages, would you agree with this statement I read somewhere else? MCP is the AI world's Rosetta Stone. It lets models and data sources finally understand each other.
No. I would more think about MCP as the CGI bin. What CGI bin did to the web, so MCP does for the estate of LLM interaction, because it allows calling out to different facilities. Take, for example, this is, I've no idea what I'm explaining this. I'm probably the person who knows the least in this room about MCP and about large language models and agentic AI.
But luckily, DJ, I'm the person who knows the least about CGI bin. So finally we are discussing and we are learning from each other. That was the whole purpose, wasn't it?
So I've just dated myself even more now. But yeah, I mean, anyway.
Or more relevant correlation would be that MCP is like OData, something that I think a lot of SAP people, have some experience with. A standard protocol.
Careful.
I know, for communicating business data that we've all sort of agreed to use in different contexts. MCP serves a similar purpose, but for talking to AI.
Absolutely. And in fact, when OData was
I like it.
being born, some people were saying, wrongly in my opinion, but some people were saying, oh, it's ODBC for the web. I mean, it's like, no.
I would disagree though. I think like CGI bin is a pathway, right? OData is sort of a meta pathway where you're not saying anything about the data that you're transferring other than here's how it's going to be structured into objects and here's how I'm going to put it into bite-sized chunks and query on it and things like that. I think to me what's different about MCP is you're putting a model, much more of a structured model, a specific structured model for not a particular task, but a particular kind of data that you're getting at. And that is what really is important to building context for an LLM, where I think OData is a level below that.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, obviously we're comparing apples with pears here, or apple, whatever the phrase is, but absolutely. But at the same time, OData as a protocol, as a standardized open protocol, MCP, standardized open protocol, and it is enabling this sort of explosion. I mean, because again, in David's session this morning, he had open code as the client, as it were, and then the LLM on one side, and then they had the MCP servers plural on the other, and one was the CAP MCP server, but also the ability to access file systems, to make API calls and everything. I mean, Nora, you were yawning, so I'm going to pick on you and ask you this question. So am I right in understanding that MCP, that the whole MCP protocol, or the servers that are sort of enabled to be born because of the MCP protocol and used, could do anything, or could be designed to do anything?
Okay, first of all, I yawned because I have been alone with the kids the entire week, and they don't really sleep properly yet. So I'm allowed to yawn.
Of course you're allowed to yawn.
Then it's already dark in Hamburg, so basically it's nighttime here. The sun has left us, and I just got a severe weather warning on my phone. So that's my yawning and my excuse. And then I think I want to kind of open a different perspective on MCP servers, because I feel like, okay, so first of all, one good thing about MCP servers is that when you, for example, build an agent, or you use a tool that is supposed to do certain things and has like an LLM as a brain in the background, either each one of these companies that have one of those tools, like VS Code or Klein or whatever, have to build their own tools and add these to their agents. Or if I want to build an agent, I have to build my own tools and give them to my agent. And then I have to do that for all the agents that I'm building. So if I build like 5 agents and they're all supposed to access a web browser, I have to build it 5 times to give each one of those agents this tool to access the web browser, right? Now, if I have one web browser MCP server, all of my agents can use this MCP server and they can all do the same thing. And I only have to update the tools in this one area in the MCP server. I don't have to update it for each of my agents. But now to the difference, that the new perspective I want to give in here, because we're talking about tools, which is basically how we use MCP servers, for example, the CAP one or the Fiori one or UI5 one or whatever, in my VS Code or a Klein or any tool where I use an MCP server to do things, right? And then there is the thing where you build an agent that is then using an MCP server to do something, but it's not helping you directly. It's in an application, like somewhere else. I think that's kind of like 2 different perspectives on it. Just wanted to throw that in there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, so Tom's just put in the chat, so back to the Rosetta Stone comparison, which is sort of a fair sort of swing back. I would still say that Rosetta Stone is more sort of translating between different languages rather than enabling sort of pipe work. But I totally get the concept of the Rosetta's, which I've touched the Rosetta Stone. I've touched the real Rosetta Stone. It was amazing. So there's a bit of a random thing there.
I knew that's why I wanted to ask you, about your opinion for this specific sentence.
I mean, it's an amazing story, right? And it's an amazing artifact. But how many hours have we got for this session?
Not enough.
Ah, okay. So anyway, so MCP servers. Nora, you just mentioned right now the CAP MCP server, and also I think you mentioned the Fiori MCP server and the UI5 MCP server. Are we aware of others? Of course, I know I'm saying that on purpose because I know, for example, Marian and other folks are in the chat who have been also doing a lot of really cool work in the community, open source wise, from an MCP server perspective. So I'm gonna pick. Who am I gonna pick? Oh, Mari's just said Nico Schönteich, and I'm not smart to. Oh, I see. Not smart to Googling it. Rosetta. We're talking about Rosetta Stones, yes. So.
Oh, who else is Googling Rosetta Stone? Isn't that this like a learning language platform thing, or am I completely mistaken? No.
Well,
I thought that's
the real original Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, I mean, the Rosetta Stone was basically a big stone with something written on it in 3 different languages, which allowed scholars to work out how to translate
the
language
hieroglyphs.
Hitherto. Is that hitherto? That's only 3 syllables.
Okay.
You know, untranslatable. So yeah.
Okay. Then forget what I said. Never mind.
No, you were right as well, because there is a software for learning languages that is called Rosetta Stone as well. So both are right.
Okay.
I think it was Greek, Demotic, and also, well, obviously, it's going to be Egyptian.
What was Greek? What?
The Demotic, which is a sort of like a scrolly, scripty sort of up and down. I mean, in my brain, it's still sort of mostly up and down characters. I can't remember exactly.
It was Greek, Demotic, and Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Oh, okay.
And it was a beautiful thing, the discovery.
And it was to get back on track.
And it was an enabler, right? It was an enabler. And basically, is it fair to say that these MCP servers are enablers for... Because I only found out yesterday, because I looked it up. I was on a run, I'm thinking, suddenly, out of nowhere, what even does GPT stand for? And so I looked it up, and it's Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And that's the reason why models like that have their limitations. And the whole MCP thing, as far as I understand it, and Nora's nodding, which is very encouraging, allows us to sort of do the last mile, the last mile of the stuff that's, that wasn't included in the pre-training because of time, but also something more specific to the task at hand. For example, I'm going to take the CAP MCP server again, to understand CDS models, domain models, by using the CDS compiler to compile to CSN into JSON, and then actually analyzing that almost like as an abstract syntax tree, right? And understanding it from a proper technical level. Is that fair to say that it is an enabler for the last mile of specifics?
Yeah, so the thing is that you want large language models to act as the brain of a system, right? So you basically kind of want them to learn how to reason and learn how to make sense of the world and make sense of things. But the problem is, especially in business use cases, is all this memory and everything that they kind of learn by heart from the internet, that's kind of useless, right? Because you never know if it's a hallucination or not. So the goal of large language model eventually should be to just being very good at reasoning and understanding context, and then being able to know, I actually don't know everything and I have to look things up. And in this looking up things, you then can, for example, use MCP servers or let it Google something or whatever. And MCP servers are just a very convenient way to give the model access to more information and to more tools, because we don't really want the model to answer from what it knows from the internet most of the time. We want it to reason through the information that it can get through, for example, MCP servers.
And these MCP servers, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of these MCP servers can themselves utilize language models. So we have the large language model, the big brain. But David was telling us this morning, and Marian, chip in if you remember who else was on the thing this morning, that David has and everything that David was saying, I understood because of Vitali's amazing AI code jam that I attended in Porto. It was fantastic. He was talking about embeddings. He was talking about vector spaces. I thought, I know exactly what he's talking about. And so basically you have, when you run the CAP MCP server, you have a small language model running on your laptop, which is possibly, arguably, and this is taking this conversation a little bit in a different direction, the real future of what we're going to be doing with language models. Because, you know, is it sustainable to have these large language models, and maybe, you know, when Anthropic and other businesses are going to start charging for this, it's going to be too expensive. We want smaller models on our tablets.
They're burning money now for sure, so that can keep going on forever.
I have a question. You just said the CAP MCP server is kind of running its own model.
Yep, that's what
But
explains.
No, so
But it's
there's
not-
always a model
yeah.
that is thinking and reasoning through everything, and then it can access the MCP server. It's basically sending a request to the MCP server saying something like, I need information about this cup thing, whatever. And then the MCP server returns information, and then that information is being sent to the model reads it, and then answers to you.
Yeah, the model's not running locally. The reasoning isn't running locally.
So if you look at the documentation of this CAP MCP server, the CDS MCP server, it has two functions which are defined for access from the to the LLM, right? Basically to the client agent, for example, GitHub Copilot or so. So they can call, for example, search docs to search a vectorized version of the CAP documentation to find information about the query you're sending in. So this is what's happening, right? So it tries to fetch the information, it returns it back to the LLM understands it, right? But the MCP server itself is not calling an LLM or is an LLM or has access to an LLM per se.
No, not an LLM, but I mean, it's calculating embeddings. I've just shared a link to some of the source code of the CAP MCP server that David was explaining this morning, and there is embedding calculations in that MCP server.
Yeah, so maybe it does like similarity search calculations.
Yeah.
That can
So
be, but the embeddings it will also get from somewhere else.
In the case
Okay.
of in the case of search docs, it's creating embeddings out of your query, right? And then it does a similarity search on the vectorized documentation, which is probably in the vector engine of HANA Cloud.
In fact, yeah, because the documentation is also available in CAPIA. There are resources in CAPIA that are aren't linked from anywhere, but they're available publicly. In fact, where is it? Cap.cloud. What's it called? Maybe somebody in the chat can remind me where it was. But basically, it's a markdown version of the entire CAP documentation that is sucked in by and used by the CAP server. By the MCP server. Anyway, maybe we're getting too detailed, and I'm getting too confused. But in terms of you know, do we use these on a day-to-day basis? I mean, for example, you know, how many folks here in the chat, but also you lot, my lovely friends and colleagues, use some form of IntelliSense, some sort of Copilot type ahead thing? When you're writing JavaScript, do you have Copilot auto suggesting and auto completing for you, Riley?
Well, I've got a unique case because of the VS Code extension for the tutorial subsystem that I just wrote for authors to help authors write better tutorials. But that plugin was created using Sonnet. And it wrote for me 22,000 lines of TypeScript code that actually work. And that was not just at a level of write me a function to do this, write me a function to do that. I gave it an architecture, and it gave me a plugin as a TypeScript and NPM project, you know, structured like a VS Code extension. And that's what really opened my eyes to the possibilities of using LLMs as you know, pair coding, or whatever you want to call that. But it really was an interesting experience.
Interesting, good, or just interesting?
A little bit of both sometimes. It definitely had some weird rough spots along the way. I think one of the things that it cemented for me for using a large language model in a coding environment is you have to know where your destination is. You have to know the language. You have to know how to architect things properly. Those elements are still fundamental to, I think, working with a large language model in a programming environment. You're going to get in the weeds very, very quickly. And I think also along the way, if you start small and kind of build up, you working with a particular large language model, you get a sense for when it's getting in the weeds. You can tell when some of the information that's coming back might be a little suspect and things like that. But I'd be interested in other people's experiences because mine was sort of unique in that the diving in as quickly as I did, and of course the environment of doing TypeScript and JavaScript in VS Code, even though it's kind of esoteric, it's still using very standard constructs. And I think to a certain extent, we do have some unique elements in sort of the CAP flavors of both Spring Boot and Node. Bring some interesting features that might not be as well understood by some large language models. But anyway, on balance, I'm carefully optimistic.
Carefully optimistic.
Well,
I think that's a fair statement. Yeah.
I can support your statement, Riley. Like, I'm building iOS apps on the side just to stay in the game. And I've used an Xcode, and I've used an LLM to generate my Swift data model for me because I'm very lazy and really don't like doing that. And it compiled, it worked. It has iCloud connection out of the box. It's great. And then on top, I wrote the security layer myself. I mean, there's not much security layer to write on top because Swift data by itself is secure, but yeah.
So DJ, tabling the next question if you want to keep talking about this, but like, where does this lead us into something else, which is the tools of the 21st century and beyond, where people aren't really even coding? Like,
that's a great segue or question and statement, or prompt.
Vitaly just disappeared. People are not coding anymore. Vitaly's leaving.
Broke Vitaly.
Look, I find the term sometimes offensive, the low code, no code, or the vibe coding and other things, because it's got to be understood on the back end what it's trying to do.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you. Vibe coding does
Rich
the same to me.
Covering his ears.
Can I share my take?
Yes, go on, Nico.
So if we're all like, let's imagine a future where we'll all just tab monkeys, like just accept,
monkeys,
tap. Even if that happens, I think there's a new skill to that tabbing that's going to evolve, because with all the technical enhancements and innovations that happened in the past, people always thought, okay, now we're going to get rid of this job or this role or whatever. But what happened actually is that opened doors to new skills, roles, and it made the playing field even bigger. And I think the same thing is going to happen here. So yes, it's going to change. And hardcore from scratch coding, probably not going to be very useful. But there's a new set of skills and possibilities and jobs and roles and all of that's going to appear. So that's my take.
And the name of this role is Vibe Code Cleanup Specialist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Senior tabber from Douglas. That's amazing.
But that exists already, the Vibe Code Cleanup Specialist.
Yeah, that's
a thing already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's just such a brilliant term, and it's really sort of subtly harsh, which I love. Yeah. In fact, the senior tabber, as Douglas says here, or the tab specialist, does remind me. This is random. It does remind me when I was working at a customer, my first job out of university back in the 80s. I was working in a data center as an operator, and we had to do things where I had to press enter and mount some tapes and press enter and press enter. We actually had a pencil on a rubber, and it was bouncing up and down like this. So that goes back decades and decades and decades. And I'm glad I kept my pencil and rubber band, because I can now use it to accept all the things that my LLM is going to suggest to me. It's amazing. It's like everything old is new again.
I have experience in tabbing then since I was like maybe 3 years old, because I remember how I always went onto my dad's lab. He's a programmer, right? So at night we would never see him, because like we grew up in this phase where when you work programmer, software developer, you would work day and night. So if I wanted to see my dad, I had to get up at night and like climb on his lap, and then he would always let me like press enter and tab and space or whatever. I was allowed to press the big buttons. So I have experience for like over 30 years of tabbing.
It all comes full circle now.
Hold on, Nora, you used tabs and spaces in the same context. That explains a lot.
Oh my God. What did I do?
Because they are the same.
Hey, listen, we got 10 minutes left. So if you've got a question or a comment or a hot take in the chat, let us know. I mean, I think Douglas's hot take on Senior Tabber is pretty cool. We have some great comments from Marianne as well. But yeah, I mean, who else has got? I mean, Rich, you were putting your hands over your ears when Josh was.
Marianne turns off keyboard. Sorry, that's funny.
Talking about vibe coding, right, and stuff like that, nonsense like that.
Yeah, vibe coding.
Why were you doing that? I mean, obviously, I'd be doing that as well. But why were you doing that?
I don't know if I just don't appreciate the word, maybe, and maybe what it puts out there. I don't know. I'm probably not going to be very popular in saying this, but I think developers are very passionate about what we do. I think we see writing code as an art form. In some ways, I know for me, if I write a nice piece of code, I'll sit back and I'll look at it and just kind of like, yeah, it looks good. I'm not reading it. It just looks good, right? I hope our developer community feels the same way about code. And when you take the coding out of my hands and put it into an AI assistant, I start losing the ability to create, to be creative, and to make myself feel successful. Does that make any sense to you guys?
Makes total sense.
What? Yeah. Sorry, Rich, finish yourself.
I just feel like if I'm having an AI assistant do it all for me, yeah, that it has its place, but not for me as a developer. If I'm writing something, and I can remember the old days, I got a request to write a report for this, that, and the other. Before they have even finished telling me what they want, I've already have half of it written in my head. So I want to go back to my desk and I want to pound it out exactly what I have in my head. I don't want to be interrupted by injection of code that may or may not be relevant at all. So until I see something that is truly going to help me and not get in the way of my creativity, maybe vibe coding takes a back seat for me. But again, that's not the popular thing these days. I get that. I see that vibe coding has its place these days. It could be very powerful for those that aren't interested in understanding the nuts and bolts of what's happening underneath the hood. I get it. But for me, I have to know what the nuts and bolts are doing, because I'm the one that has to go back and fix it when the vibe coding doesn't work all that well. So that's just my take on it. Somebody's going to convince me over the next 6 to 12 months, one way or the other, because that's where the industry is going.
Can I just try to? Sorry, go ahead.
No, Kevin. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say, can I try to change your look at it?
Yeah.
So you're not just a coder, right? You're a problem solver, and code is just your tool to solve that problem. So your creativity is not going away at all, because you're still needing to problem solve and see the I don't like the vibe coding term. I would see it as a pair programming buddy, which you don't have to drink coffee with, which is great, right? So you don't have to socialize with it. So just use it as a tool to help you solve your problems quicker, and not necessarily let it write all your code. I think this is the wrong approach. I think this is like how the industry and maybe some parts of the community sell it wrong, in my opinion, is like, this is great, take it, type something in, it generates you the world. Like, this is not how you should see it. I would see it as another tool at my hand as a problem solver in writing code faster and getting to the finish line faster in a more efficient way. And as you said, you still have to be an expert in the technology you're programming in or for to be able to consider if that whatever the machine spits out is actually correct or not, right?
Right.
So let me ask a question.
That's the
I
thing.
think that
go ahead,
there's a
Tom.
big I think there's a difference between vibe coding and AI assisted application development, right? The term vibe coding, I think, is more meant for the situation where I'm sitting here and I'm having a conversation in natural language with the IDE and it's doing everything for me with just natural language. Whereas AI assisted application development, in my mind, is what we have with Joule today in ADT, where I need a block of code that does X, Y, or Z. I don't feel like writing it. Hey, Joule, give me a snippet of code. I can take it and inject it. That's AI assisted development. Now, in vibe coding would you could just tell it to do that and it would inject it where it needs to be all over the place, whether it's in 10 different files or one different file. That's what vibe coding means to me, where the developer aspect of writing code is no longer in the developer's hands, it's in the AI's hands, if that makes sense. Whereas application or AI assistant application development, the developer is still in full control and he or she can take and accept and do things as they want to, right? Just being assisted. But I think vibe coding is just this more of typing natural language and boom, things are just happening and changing and you don't know what the hell is going on, right? I need to know what the hell is going on.
Rich, but the funny thing is that your explanation of vibe coding is completely not different from the original explanation that Andrej Karpathy used when he first introduced this term. Because when he introduced this term, it was completely sarcastic, right? He wrote exactly, vibe coding is not too bad for throw away weekend projects. That was his explanation of vibe coding is. What happened is that industry took this seriously, and a lot of people took this seriously. And we are living in the world where no one really understood what Andrej meant when he introduced this term, right? So that's what I'm saying.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's been, I think the term's been overused and oversold. And yeah, I think the major use case, like you said here, is for throwaway test applications or something like that. But I just don't see it in the enterprise right now. And that doesn't make me a popular person, but prove me wrong. I want to be proved wrong here. So
that's a great attitude. And also it may be a great place to sort of start to wrap things up here. I mean, I can't believe I just looked at the watch thinking, we probably got about 30 minutes left. We got almost 30 seconds left.
Sundial or watch, DJ? Which do you prefer?
Pardon?
A sundial or a watch?
Well, the sundial is in the repair shop, so I've got to use.
Just as we're talking about the progression of timekeeping, right? This is what code is, right? It's a way to interface with measuring data and talk about how to interface with it.
I just
is the battery dead in your sundial?
Longer than I expected over my monitor. So yeah, exactly. So
and we still didn't discuss if MCP server is the server. But we will leave this to another discussion.
We'll leave this to another time. Maybe we'll have another one of these. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much to everybody in the chat for giving us your comments and thoughts and everything. Thank you all to my lovely developer advocate colleagues. You're all awesome. I love you very much. JS, the best language in the world by far. I've just seen that in an internal chat. I just realized I shouldn't have read that out. But anyway, it is the best language in the world. And we'll leave it at that, talking developer tools. Thanks, everybody, for taking part in Devtoberfest. And we'll wrap Devtoberfest up next week, as it were. But for now, it's bye-bye from me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
See you.
everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.
Bye, bye,
Bye.
bye, 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 bye.